Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is amazing. We have got some really nice content and some cool stuff to share with you. So together with me, first of all, my name is Misbah. I've been in the content building and the no-code space for some time. Together with me is Gabriel, who's one of the co-founders. So we got the co-founder energy in the room. And
Yeah.
we got David. David is an AI builder, educator, and got some awesome hundreds of videos on how to build and do things. So yeah, Gabriel and David, I'll pass it to both of you, maybe quick 1 minute before we get started.
Go for it, Gabriel.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Thank you. You probably have seen me around the community, right? Now we have these two folks that are just great communicators and great. They just know how to use Langflow even better than me, and they will create a lot of great stuff for us. Really have to be here, and I'm hoping I can help you all with whatever questions you have.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Gabriel. David.
All right. Hello. I'm David Jones Gilardi. I'm a developer relations engineer. I've been coding in DBA for about 30 years or something like that now. And obviously, we've all been taken by storm by the whole Gen AI kind of explosion, if you will, in the last year. This has been super exciting. I'm here to learn with all of you and help everybody kind of understand how you can use this kind of technology. And same thing as Gabriel, right? You know, I'm here to answer whatever questions you might have, things like that. So I'd say tally ho.
Awesome. Thank you both. So yeah, I think we'll kind of keep it quite flexible in terms of the format. If any one of you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or in the Q&A section. Both are towards the right bottom in the Google Meet setting. So you'll see that chat is pretty visible. The triangle and circle and all, they'll give you option for Q&As. You can drop it in there. Yeah, we'll try to answer as we go through the session. We'll try to make it as interactive as we can. Yeah, the first part will be where Gabriel is going to walk us through what Langflow is, how to get up and started quickly with Langflow. We'll look at a few different options. A lot of folks have questions. Which one is the easiest one? Which one is where I can call maybe Langflow as an API or so? So we'll look at a few different options over there. David is going to cover the basics of how one can do things in Langflow. So from the canvas to some of the components to just building a simple flow in Langflow and just getting started. So yeah, and then after both of them, I'll go with sharing one of the flows that I shared recently on Blogger Agent Team. So how one could make a flow, then combine that with a few different flows, and then call it within Langflow or from outside, and do some cool things in there. So yeah, anything else, David, Gabriel, that you might want to mention before we start?
Not specifically about the flows and stuff I'm going to show, but there is, funny enough, Henry Cobb just asked in the Q&A. He mentioned he has no chat permission, but I just looked, and everybody should have. But he did ask what sort of hardware we'd be using today, right? And I know I can answer from my perspective, but I'm curious now, Misbah and Gabriel, if I think we're all running this stuff pretty much local. And
yeah, and yeah, MacBooks. In my case, it's a laptop. And you know, run or possibly, you know, for me it's just talking about installation, but yeah, MacBooks and Arc browser is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
no specialized hardware today.
Yeah, and then same thing, you know, a MacBook, and also have installation on Rail or Render, actually, that probably Gabriel is going to mention about. So one click install, get up and running. So yeah, got a few different options.
Okay,
awesome.
Good.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Gabriel.
Okay, so maybe I'll just share a couple options we try to give the community on deploying Langflow. I just should preface that all of any problems you encounter, you can talk to us on Discord and we can help out. And we can, especially if there are any like ways you want to use Langflow, just let us know and we'll try to create the avenue for those two. The idea, maybe I think I could just talk for a while and then I'll show some of the options later. So Langflow is a pip install package, so a Python package that you can install with pip easily, and or pipx, which kind of takes care of all the some of the not problems, but steps you have to take on creating a virtual environment or even installing a certain Python version you want, right? It can take care of a lot of small steps and make it easier for you, right? That's two like the main ones and the ones that most developers use. But from that point, you install it in your computer, right? So if you're just building or if you're accessing Langflow somewhere else, you could, change the URL to have access to it. But you also might want, once you have, for example, a database in somewhere, or you just want to have a more robust, accessible setup to access from other computers, you might want to deploy it in a service, right? So the way we have some complex setups that the community have contributed in the repo. So if you go into the scripts folder, you'll see AWS and GCP options. They are very complex, right? And especially with 1.0 alpha, there may be some changes required in them, right? And they have been giving support for it. So it's pretty cool that if you see the size of the contribution that the user provided is, incredible. So you can have that, and it sets up ECS, ECR, for example, for AWS, right? Gets everything up and running, and it's very interesting. Now, if you were looking for a straight up, just a very simple, a couple steps deployment solution, then I'm going to share my screen real quick here, and one of them is Railway, right? So let me close this up. So Railway, I've created this template a couple of weeks ago, and I think yesterday I just reran, making sure everything was ready. But we can see now that 60 people are already using it, like actively, and the main Langflow, it has hundreds of people using active projects already. But this one, if you just go, let me maybe show real quick Langflow here. If you go into the README, right, you can start a repo, right? But go down here, you see that you can just click on these, and it will get you straight into the repo, the template. And clicking here, and maybe a couple more steps, will get you a Langflow instance running with a Postgres database that will keep all your flows through version changes, right? Updates. So this is a good one. Very straightforward setup. There's also deploy on render. So render has a blueprint system. And the idea for now, what I'd suggest is, instead of using the main branch, which is what's set up by default in the file, what you should use is the dev branch. So there's a lot of branches here. We're gonna have to we should clean these up. But if you go over to dev branch, this is probably this is the 1.0 preview version. So this will get you all the cool features we've been building through the last couple months, right? And my recommendation is that you use the dev branch because we're very close to getting it into a stable state, and the amount of improvements is just too many to pass on, right? There are other solutions too. One of a couple of them, or sorry, one of them you should. I'm going to mention it, but it's sort of in development. But Hugging Face Spaces is a good solution. It has some kinks. Sometimes it, Hugging Face changes some parameter, some configuration that makes it not work sometimes. But the idea here is you'd have to duplicate the space, and down here we're setting this variable to remove the API keys so that people don't use the main space and end up getting their API key stolen or something like that, right? So whenever the user saves the API key, we remove it before saving it to the database. So it's not gonna run anything. You have to duplicate it and then set this variable to false like this, and this will then create a private space for you that you can then use as you see fit, right? And the other one is, let me see if I can get it here, which are the Lightning AI Studios. So in here we are, let me see if I can show. So okay, so here we have a space too. So this is a bit different than Hugging Face Spaces. Here you are essentially creating a laptop, remote laptop is what they call, right? You have access to a Visual Studio Code instance for you. You have access to Langflow, and then we're trying to set up sort of like a good starter experience here. So you have options, for example, to your components that you define in these folders here. They already are loaded into Langflow, so you can have a quick way to have your components here and just use this as an API, for example, to run your specific tasks or your prompts, right? Maybe you just want to have an API that you can just call from your computer to, let's say, grab some information on Discord and then create a summary for that for you, right? Or even run what Misbah is going to show us later. So this is a very good setup, but it's still in development, and feedback is always welcome to see how can we make this more useful, right? And I think, and by the way, just as sort of, let me see here if I can show, just sort of as a side that I think it's useful is that right now in the alpha, we have added the option to create API keys on the UI in the dev branch, right? So for auto login equals true. So when you don't have to log into Langflow, which sort of creates a hidden user for you, now you can create API keys for that user as well, also from the CLI. So that will allow you to have your API key and access it, your API, right, your Langflow, and in a secure way, but also access it from anywhere, right, instead of just going and running inside the browser, right? So yeah, I think these are good options. As I said, there may be some other options. Maybe Azure. We could definitely use a good Azure setup in the repo. We can work on that later at some point. So David, did you you raised your hand?
Yeah, I do. I have a question for you, actually. You know, you've just kind of demonstrated very quickly a bunch of different services that you could deploy to Railway, Render, Hugging Face Spaces, all that kind of deal, right? And then the last one there is there. Where would you use the different spaces? Or is it really more like, well, it just depends on the particular service that you have access to or you are familiar with or something? Is there anything really different between them? Like, is there a case where you one for one case compared to another? Or is it kind of more of just getting as many options and bringing Langflow to developers and such?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what you said last is true, right? We want to have all the options. We do as sort of like a, let's say, technical person, I'd say that AWS and the AWS setup we have in the repo, I think it's more production level because you get different containers and scalability in a way, right? But I see a lot of, or most use cases can be fulfilled by all of these setups. Even if you're running locally and you just have, it depends on the use case, right? But if you're running locally, most of your personal use cases could be enough, right? Having one of the things that I'm planning on doing a lot from now on, now that we have a playground, is having Langflow running and just bookmark a bunch of flows that I use all the time, and just let me quickly go over that one and just say, oh, here is a piece of code. Please help me, find the problem here, and just enter, run it, get the answer, and get out. Right? Very straightforward thing. So there's a lot of, let's say, the cases that are more advanced. They probably have more long-term not survival, but reliability, right? But I use Railway, for example, a lot, in pretty much even for clients before, and even for internal experiments, running everyone having the same database and all that. It all works out, so right. But a cool thing in Langflow that I like a lot is having just a database somewhere, and you can just point to it, right? And everyone can just run Langflow locally on their computer, but the data comes from unified place. So that's like essentially you get Langflow on your computer, running everything on your computer, but the data from the flows only comes from elsewhere. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also I think Gabriel, what I've seen is folks who want to keep it very simple, one-click installation. A lot of them tend to go with Railway and Render option, right? So it's one click on the repo. It takes you to the next step, which is on those platforms. So if you already have an account on Render and Railway, it just says, okay, deploy. You deploy, and it's ready. So it's just probably the simplest ones, right? So, and then next is probably if you want to do local, have access to some of your files, then of course you can do the local one. But I really like Gabriel, where you showed the Lightning AI option as well, right? So where you have a whole computer sort of thing over there where you can control, you can have access to the storage and all. So that's quite nice, actually. I haven't used that, but that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I feel like I want to spend some time on it to get it. We were even thinking about having a data sort of like a starter database, right? That will get you a bunch of flows, and for example, let's say your solution is like stable. Okay, so let's put it in there and just have people have some starter flows already, right? So
Yeah, I think that would be really nice. So maybe while we're on that one, there's also store, right? Gabriel, how do you kind of, distinguish between those starter flows and the store that's available?
Yeah. So I think the store is in a very good place right now, right? It's there's a lot of people logging. Like we have had for the past 2 days the most traffic there, right? And I feel like the the best place to get starter flows is the store. But we maybe for some cases you don't want it, like your let's say you're putting Langflow available for your team, right? And you have, let's say, an HR team or an accounting team, and they want to create some applications to help them out through the day. Maybe you don't want them bringing stuff from elsewhere. Maybe you want to have like some pre-built thing that they can only use those, right? And for those cases, I see having like a local way of bringing things into Langflow a bit better. But that's like one of the use cases, right? Maybe we can even think of creating like just limited access, maybe, even for the store. But the store as a place to share, I think that's the best one, right? Because you'll get feedback from like not you'll see how many people liked it, etc. And that will give you like a sense of the utility of what you're building, right? So that's very useful.
Awesome. No, thanks a lot, Gabriel. Yeah, we do have a few more questions that we'll probably take towards the end. We'll probably, yeah. So maybe people who join a bit later, there is an option at the bottom where it says Q&A. So you see those triangle squares. Within that, there's an option for Q&A. Chat doesn't seem to be working for many folks, so it's totally fine if you post it either places. We'll answer the question. So yeah, with that, David, let's get started with how to build a flow and do some awesome things in Langflow.
Yeah, let's check it out. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Boom. All right, just a quick thumbs up if you can see it. I see it, so it looks like it's coming through. Let me know if my Zoom level is not good. I see a bunch of thumbs up. Thank you for that. All right, so as Gabriel was talking, there are multiple ways that you can install and launch Langflow. We have the cases where you have those, public-facing services like Render and Railway and things like that. But it's also super easy to get it running locally. It's just pip install Langflow. Matter of fact, if you go to the GitHub repository, make sure right now you're using the --pre version, right? Because as Gabriel mentioned, I definitely want you to use the alpha because it's got all the latest and greatest and stuff, right? And what we're looking at here is the alpha. So this is after I've done my pip install and I've just executed Langflow run locally, right? And you can see I'm over here at my local host. So this is just running on my box. This comes to a question, by the way. I'm not going to rabbit hole on this too far, but question earlier about what kind of, is there special hardware or anything like that? And I kind of wonder if that question came from, well, where are you running your models? And how are you running these Gen AI flows and such? And what I'm going to show you here in a moment is Langflow has support. It's pretty much model agnostic. It has support for a ton of the public models, Cohere, OpenAI, Vertex, all that kind of stuff. And then there's also support for Ollama, right? I do see that question. I'm not going to try to answer that just yet. There was a question earlier from Atin saying, I'm curious if coders are using local models and not calls to GPT-4o or Claude. I think we'll save that one for later. But to kind of get at that, like you can go both ways. So because in the cases that I'm going to show you, I'm using all public facing models, I don't need to have any special hardware or anything on my local machine. But obviously if I was running my own models, that might be a little different. All righty. Oh, I see Atin has raised their hand. Did I miss something there? Let's see. All right. put something in the Q&A if you need to. I'll be kind of keeping an eye on that. All right, so here I've started Langflow, right? This is the basic interface that you'll see. And, you know, if I did nothing else and I just go to start here, what'll happen is it'll bring me into the canvas, right? And you can see this kind of cool interface here. You know, you've got this drag and drop ability, zoom in, zoom out. That'll become more apparent what that's for here in a moment when I bring in some components. But over on the left-hand side, right, you have a set of components. So we're working on building out GenAI workflows, right? So let's say I want to build a chatbot. Well, I'm going to need some kind of input. I'm going to need a way to communicate with my LLM. I'm going to need a prompt, right? I need a way to set the context, tell it, what is it that we're doing, right? What do I need you to do for me from, you know, from the chatbot perspective? And then I need some kind of output. Right now, the chatbot, as I would argue, is probably the simplest, most basic example. I'm going to start there. But as you notice on the left, as I open these up, you'll see you have some basic inputs, things like chat input, prompt, two things we're going to use in a moment, outputs, whether that's chat or going to records. And by the way, like there are a ton of components. I'm not going to go through all the components. There are a ton, but I am going to point out some that are pretty key to at least get going. I would definitely suggest that when you run Langflow, you kind of experiment and take a look at what's in here. Models, as I mentioned before, Langflow is pretty model agnostic, right? So you can see there are a ton of models that are available. Today, I'm going to use OpenAI because I already have a key with them. And then on the vector store side. So for a basic chatbot, do I need a vector store? Do I need a place to store data and then perform vector searches and stuff? No. But as I get into more complex capabilities, maybe like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where I am taking maybe information that's specific to my business or something sensitive or something that the general, you know, public-facing LLMs don't have, that is a case where I might want to start now putting things into a vector store. And again, Langflow is pretty darn agnostic. You can see there's actually a huge list of vector stores that you can choose from. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. So now, separate from that, as Gabriel mentioned a moment ago, there is a playground. So as you start to build out a flow, this is a way to kind of test your flow and test the playground. You can get in there and you can kind of see how is it working, right? It's a really neat way to validate what you're doing. And then there is an API. And I'll show that to you here in a moment. The API will, once you've got a flow, now I can access it with something like HTTP and curl or Python API, things like that, right? There's all sorts of options you have from that standpoint. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I am going to go and, so that was just the basic canvas. But as Gabriel mentioned, if you want, you can actually start with some templates, right? This is the easiest way to get going by far. Right. So let's go ahead and just start with the basic prompting. Hello world. Now let me zoom in here a little bit. All right. OK, so let's take a look at what we've got. So I mentioned before, I want to create a basic chatbot. Right. In this case, I'm going to create a chatbot that is going to talk like a pirate. Right. So this would be equivalent if, you know, if you've gone into like ChatGPT or, you know, Perplexity or something like that, and you say something like, hey, talk to me like a pirate. And then you have a conversation with it, you know, and stuff. You're giving it a, you know, you're prompting it with some information, some context. So that's what this prompt is. And then the model that we choose. So again, I can just come over here. If I wanted to, I could just pick one. Right. You know, I could pick Cohere, I could pick whatever, and then just wire it up. But in this case, we're going to stick with OpenAI, which is part of the default template here, and then the output. All right. So let's look at these individually a little bit. So the input is super simple. Now, what Langflow really does for you, I think, I mean, Gabriel, I'll watch Gabriel's face when I say this and see what he thinks. But like what it really does is it allows you to visually create GenAI workflows without totally no code, right? Now, I saw a question come up earlier. Is this a no coder thing? Is it for coders? I think it's a bit of both, honestly. You know, so but it allows you to wire these up like very fast. And under the hood of each of these components is actually Python code, right? This is implemented in Python. And a lot of, you'll see in a lot of these, there's a lot of LangChain, right? You know, it's built on LangChain and such like that. And from my experience, coding things up in pure LangChain raw, right? Compared to doing it in Langflow, Langflow is so much faster. I mean, the whole idea is that I can just come in, drag my components in, wire them up, give them some basic settings, and now I have a working flow. right? So it kind of, again, there was a question earlier about like, hey, is this a no code or kind of coder thing? Again, I think it's a bit of both. You could come from either perspective and be totally okay. Okay, so in the case of the chat input, it's just a very, very simple input. This is their simple component. All we're doing is this is the first message that we're going to have, right? I'm starting with hi there or hi or whatever. Now notice these little circles here. This is where it's really cool. This is the intuitive part. Like, so if I get rid of one of these, I'm gonna go like this. There we go. I didn't actually mean delete the whole thing. I totally fat fingered that. But if I grab, I can just grab. You see, I'm grabbing the little circle here, and then I just wire it right up. So now I've connected these two components. Now I'm saying that whatever the chat input message is, I'm going to wire up to the user input of my prompt. Now you might be looking at this and wondering, where did user input come from? What is that, right? That's like, what is going on here? So this is another really cool feature. I'm actually going to just take this out for fun. And notice now I have this prompt template, and it just, you know, I can put in my prompt, but that user input is gone. So what'll happen is when I am creating my prompt, if I enclose a variable name per se in curly braces like this, and I say check and save, then Langflow will interpret that and goes, ah, okay, you're telling me that you want that to be, you know, you want that to be the user value in this particular case, right? Because I'm associating it with the user in my prompt. And then it will expose that here. So I can very easily then just say, oh, okay, I'm going to take the chat input here, the message, I'm going to push that over to the user input, right? Now it's setting up my prompt template. Now, the next spot here is I said, okay, I'm going to use OpenAI today. Maybe I want to use GPT-4o. Now, I already have an OpenAI key. You know, if you're not already familiar with a lot of the public models and such, pretty much across the board, if you're using any of these things, you know, I have an account with OpenAI, right? You have an account with them, you get a key and such. And this actually comes into another feature of Langflow that's super cool. I could come in here and type my key, you know, whatever it is. Thankfully, Langflow, at least out of the gate, immediately obscures that information, so I don't just expose it to everybody. But really, a better practice here would be to store that securely, because that's my key, right? There's money associated with that. That's the key to my account. So you can go in Langflow, you can click on this globe, and then come down to add new variable. I can say some API key, right? I can tell it, hey, it's a credential. I want to store this securely, and then give it whatever value, right? And then once I say save, that'll become available. Now I've done this already, so I've got my Open API key here. I'm going to set that, and again, notice that I can just easily choose the model and such, set the temperature, things like that. Okay, great. So now we've got the basic setup. We have a chat input. We have a prompt, talk to me like you're a pirate. We have our LLM, our model here. In this case, I've chosen OpenAI with GPT-4o, and finally the output. So now I can come into the playground. Now, before I do that, I like to check, right? That little build that you see I'm building them, I just like to make sure that everything is good. As a matter of fact, is a quick little example. Let's pretend I didn't realize I needed a key there. Well, what would happen? I'm missing my OpenAI API key, right? So now I know I need to go back. Let's go ahead and set that. Everything checks out. Let's take a look at the playground. Now, you remember I had in my chat input, I had hi, right? And so it's saying hi, and we have some fun pirate speak. I'd like some rum, right? We make the parrot very happy with this, right? Because they like to talk about rum for sure. But this is like this kind of basic interaction that we might have with, you know, just a basic chatbot. Now, what's cool about this, I mentioned before, right? So we have this playground. Now we can see it working. And again, if you've ever, you know, I'd love to see thumbs up from folks here if anybody's actually coded up LangChain on their own, right? You can do that. You can totally do that. But it's a lot faster to just whip up one of these flows, you know, validate that it's working, see the interaction, and then you can convert it down to raw code if you want, right? I saw a thumbs up come over there. Okay, so the next thing here is this API. So we've got this flow, it's working, playground looks good, it's doing what we expect. Now, how do I expose this to my application, right? This really the butter, honestly, because if I, you know, it's great that I have that little chatbot and everything that's right here, but I need it in my app. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. One is with curl, with just HTTP, right? So if I were to grab this, I can just copy this out of here, and this is like the basic, you know, I don't have any options or anything, no tweaks or whatever, just the very basic thing, it'll go ahead and run. Or if I'm in Python and I want to use the Python API, you can just copy those verbatim, right? These are, you know, these are wholly contained and working on their own. There's also an HTML widget where you can embed it into your site if you wanted to have like a basic widget or something like that. So there's a nice set of options here. What's actually really cool too is another feature called tweaks. So right now I don't have tweaks on, but if I turn tweaks on, you'll see all of these options show up. So where does that come into play, right? So if I come into tweaks and let's say for a moment, I want to change the input value. Change the input value, right? And then if I come back and I turn on tweaks, oh, the demo gods got me. The demo gods got me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the demo. Yeah, go ahead.
It changes if you don't have to activate the tweaks. So deactivate the tweaks. Yeah.
And then
and
reactivate
change
that?
it again. No. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Deactivate it and then just change it there. Yeah. And it's going
Here?
to update. Yeah.
Okay.
Change it to something. No.
Okay.
Do it live, right?
Right?
No,
Isn't that
yeah,
fun?
go- yeah, but
I mean,
no, yeah, just if you deactivate it and then write something there in the tweaks in the tab. Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah, change it again, right? Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And now go back to the code. Right.
Tweaks.
So now oh no, it's
Nope.
there already. See?
Oh, okay. Was it set in the default? Did I see what it
Yeah,
did.
possibly, yeah.
I got you. Okay, I missed that little part. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is live. If you weren't sure
Yeah.
this was live, then it for sure. I see. So you got, okay, I got you. And then it'll automatically apply it. Okay. Well, that's cool. The things we're learning from Gabriel live as we do this, but you get the general idea, right? So it gives you all these really nice options where you can, in fact, implement this in your own code. All right, let's see. How are we doing? Any questions or anything, Misbah? Can you tweak inputs like files? Yes. Yes, you can tweak inputs. I was actually just playing with that the other day. Let's see.
Yeah, I think there was also a question about copy, paste, undo, right? So there is that option. I think Gabriel, you mentioned in the chat.
Yeah, if you just Command Z or Control Z, it just undoes. Control C, Control.
Oh,
V.
so the normal kind of
Also-
commands you might. Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, cool. I just learned today.
Yeah.
I just learned about that. I did not know about that little feature right there. One other thing I'll tell you here in these, each component, you know, separate from being able to go to the code and everything, they have advanced options, right? So underneath the hood, there's actually more going on in some of these. In particular, the session ID I think is actually pretty interesting. One of the other templates is the memory chatbot, and it makes use of. Let's set up a couple things here. It makes use of a session ID. And what's really cool about that is, you know, if you weren't aware of that at first, you may not know that that component had any other options, right? Like the chat input here has the session ID, but if I were to pull one out by default, oh, that's right, I already have one. If I were to pull one out by default, it doesn't have that session ID. So you can always, I recommend actually to always take a look at the advanced options and see what's there. Now, in the case of the memory chatbot, session ID comes into play because this is really an extension of the basic chatbot, but now it has memory and it's able to hold on multiple conversation threads, right? So if I were to change the session ID to be something else, and I, you know, as long as that is the same across the board, then I can have multiple conversations and have memory of those conversations, right? But again, the basic component just didn't expose that because it wasn't really relevant at the time. Okay. All right, so I figured we could go for a really fun one, which is going. I've got what, 4 minutes, Misbah? Do we think? Let's see if I can do the RAG one in 4 minutes, because this is again where these templates come into play. I want everybody to kind of keep in mind the amount of code and work you would need to do. I mean, all of these, by the way, are completely wholly contained in these nice classes. You can literally pull them right out and you can implement them locally if you really wanted to. But, you know, there's a good amount in this particular case. And if you're not familiar with RAG, RAG is a way that you can augment the LLM's knowledge, again, as I was saying before, with knowledge that might be specific to you, your organization, something sensitive or whatever, without having to retrain the model, right? And you can do it real time. So this actually gets a bit more interesting because there's a lot more to do. But again, in Langflow, it allows you to wire this stuff up pretty darn easy. So in this case of RAG, I'm going to essentially have a chatbot that has a communication or has a conversation with a local document that I have. And so I can use those same globals across the model or the flows, right? So I was able to just use that OpenAI API key that I have. In this case, I'm actually using a vector store. So AstraDB search is going to be a store. I've already created a database there, so I am just going to go ahead and, again, these globals are just honestly so useful for this very reason right here. Let's see, there's my prompt. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to, as I'm taking information out of the document, which I'll show you in a second, it's actually going to store that's going to vectorize that data. It's going to store that data in my vector store, and then it will use that to apply to the context of the LLM, so it'll know what we're talking about. All right, let me test this flow real quick. And this little build function is super useful from the standpoint because it allows you to very quickly just go, hey, is my flow, is this all working? Right? Okay, great. There's that part. Now I need a file. You're going to laugh at me for this file, but that's okay because I have this old Kubernetes workshop we did from years ago. And I like using this one because the LLMs have no knowledge of it at all, right? And then we'll go ahead and do this, and then finally grab our token endpoint. And again, these token and endpoints and stuff, these are from a database that I had previously created. Okay, so again, kind of setting this up in this last minute here. So what I'm doing is this little flow right here is going to read from this PDF file. Like I said, this is on a Kubernetes workshop we did years ago. The LLMs are not aware of it, but I want to have a conversation with this PDF. I want them to know. I want the LLM to know things about it so I can ask questions about it. I'm going to iterate this recursive character thing. I'm going to iterate through all of the text that is in that PDF. I'm going to then create vector embeddings off of that data, and then I'm going to store that in my store, right? So this is happening in this little flow here. And then up here, this is using that same vector store, right? So now it can pull the context from the vector store, right? And that's where it gets fed. This whole flow feeds it into the context. And let's see, let me go ahead and clear that out. All right, now, if I was to ask a question like, who is Jeff? If I went to ChatGPT and just said, who is Jeff? What would it do? It'd be like, I don't know, or completely hallucinate or something, right? It just would not know. But because I fed it in, because I was able to use this RAG kind of flow to provide it specialized information that the LLM didn't have in its context, now it actually knows exactly who Jeff Carpenter is. And this comes right out of that particular workshop that I was talking about. So it's a really neat way. I mean, and you can just wire this up, like, and there's a basic template for you. We were able to do it in 4 minutes, essentially. So just hopefully gives you an idea of some of the things you can do. And what's one last thing I'll say before I give it back over to Misbah is, we've used a small subset of the capabilities that are in these components, and we're already building some pretty powerful GenAI workflows. All right, Misbah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really nice. Learned a lot, David. I did not know about the tweaks and testing that out. So that's nice.
I apparently didn't know about switching on like that.
But yeah, it seems that, I keep learning every time just playing around and seeing, just different parts. So yeah, that was really nice. David, maybe just one question. When you're building a flow, how do you go about what components to use, how to put it all together? Do you usually have a use case in mind and then you want to just test it out, or do you kind of go from some templates or store? What's your usual thought process?
I have started, number one, with the templates that are in Langflow itself. If the template doesn't do what I'm looking for, I go right to the store. As a matter of fact, now I think about it, I didn't even show that. I can do that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'll just pop that over. Yeah, so I'll go to the store next, right? Matter of fact, to that point, let me, here we go, move this out of the way. I build a lot of content. I have YouTube videos, things like that. And I happen to see somebody built a flow here in the store, that's YouTube QA one, that allows you, it allows you to pull in the transcripts, transcription from the videos, and then, you know, have a conversation with them. I thought that was super cool, right? And what's really neat here is that you see this little plus, right? So you can just click on this little plus and it'll inject it into your local one. So what I'll do is I'll look around. I'll start first kind of, you know, it starts by default of all, but I will tend to start with flows because I might be looking for an overall flow item. But to something like Gabriel said earlier, right? Let's say I'm looking specifically for some of the Notion stuff. Let's just, again, go for live demo fun, right? All these Notion components were just added. So if I knew that I was interested in that, I might start there. You know what I mean? But again, you can just click these and insert them right into your local database and such like that. And so, yeah, I start with the templates. If the template doesn't do it, I go to the store and pick a flow. Otherwise, if it's really not there, I'll start figuring it out. There is a custom component as well that allows you to create your own components, right? You're not limited to only the components that are in Langflow itself.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I also kind of tend to go, like, you know, look at templates. If not, then see if there's something in the store. And if not, then maybe the custom component side, right? I see someone ask a question about building or kind of coding some of these. We'll go in details on how you can actually make one, and hopefully in one of the future seminars. But it's really cool. I mean, pretty much anything that you can do in Python, be it just general Python, or if you come from the LangChain side of things, you know, and coding with LangChain in Python, then you can do all of that in these custom components. So I've been kind of testing out so many things recently, and it's really amazing. One of the use case was, you know, just capturing image from webcam and saving it locally, and kind of going from there on to giving it to one of the GPT models. All of that, you know, you can use the available components. If not, just add a few line of code, and just it can do that. And then I really, I think a lot of folks can either go with the usual, you know, adding code, or you can ask one of the models. So if you ask Claude, or if you ask, you know, there's a GPT in the store, which is for custom components of Langflow, just ask him whatever you want, and it will give you the code. And I just copied, pasted, and it pretty much works, you know, out of the box. So that was, I think, very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put Gabriel on the spot just for a moment, because I see a question that he'll probably like, is that if we encounter an issue like David did just now, but without Gabriel available to correct us on call, what would you recommend is the best way to get help and troubleshoot? And you know, there's to me, there's a couple different methods, right? GitHub issues or the Discord channel. But I'm curious, Gabriel, like, what would you prefer?
Yeah, it all depends, right? I prefer GitHub issues just because it gets sort of in the flow of, you know, getting people feedback from when we fix it, right? As soon as we fix it, the person will get sort of a notification, so that helps. But the Discord, it starts as just a forum, but then it becomes a knowledge base, right? And that's where people are interacting the most. So where they can easily find knowledge about a certain problem, right? So what I see is for a problem like yours, people are, you know, asking a lot of questions about these, like in very simple terms. But I do think that once you think there is indeed a problem, I think the GitHub issues get like sort of like actionable results, especially even for a contribution from the community, where people can just look at all of the real problems that we have there.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you both. That was really nice. So I'm just going to quickly cover one use case, building on where David left. So just taking one of the templates, right? How you can write a blog or ask, you know, general basic chatbot related questions. So what I'm going to do is just showcase one basic one, and then kind of go from there onto a little advanced version of it. And all of that is just the available flows or components within Langflow, so nothing custom. So let's see if I can share this real quick. So the idea came to me where I was like, okay, is there a way we can just take a URL, see what's on that web page, and then from there just start writing blog articles, right? So if you were to test the just one of the basic templates in Langflow, just give it a try. It's a new project. There's something called a blog writer, and if you open that, you'll see that it takes a URL. Then there's a prompt that takes in the components of URL. So what this block is doing is it reads what's on the web page and it fetches content from there. So I'm going to zoom in. And once it pulls that content, it's going to send it over to the prompt. And in here, as David showed, we can reference that. So we have this in curly braces. So we have reference 1, reference 2. And what it's doing is it's basically pulling that URL content and providing it to the next step, which is going to be sending over to the LLM. And in here, we're also giving some instructions to the model. And those instructions are use the reference above to style right, or, you know, it could be anything, right? So for me, it was just write a blog post in a certain fashion. And from there, once we send that over to OpenAI, then we get some response back. So this is a template available in Langflow. Now, kind of going back to the idea, and this is usually how I like to do things, where I just want to sketch what I have in my mind, just, you know, draw it out and see how it's going to work out. And then once you have the sketch, right, then it's easy to implement. So then for me it was, okay, we can take the URL, we can get something out, right? And then take that info and then write articles. So now you can just do at one step, but then I really wanted to get use cases. I wanted the GPT models or whatever model I'm using to think of use cases, which could be 50 different use cases. And then for each of those, I wanted to write an article and then from there post it, right? So that's where I have the first one where it says, okay, extract info, get all the features of the whatever is listed on the website. From there, we're taking all the features and we're building the list of use cases. And once we have the list of use cases, we want to go to write blog posts for each. So I just broke it down into 3 different flows. And that's where, if you know, basically the flexibility here is that you can have multiple flows and then call each of those flows. And I also wanted to test the API functionality, so I'll quickly talk about that as well. So first one, as we saw, it's going to take the URL, it'll take some instructions, pretty much similar to the base template available. We send it over to one of the models. So in this case, I'm not using OpenAI, I'm using Grok, so I'm calling the Llama 3 model. And then I get something out. And I used a text output instead of chat because I wanted to call it from an external API. So pretty much I'm sending in a URL from that API and I get the text output back. Second case, then I take the output here, which is the list of features. So let me check if so I have something for log space, and it talks about Langflow. If we were to just run this, let's see how that looks like. Okay, so we have some output here. It says that, you know, these are the list of features available on that particular blog or on that particular website. Great. So now that we have that, we can go to the next one, which is from features to use cases. In here, pretty simple. I'm just saying, okay, here are the list of features, right, that we got from the previous one. We send that with a prompt, and in here I said, based on the list of features, your task is to generate 10 use cases, right? And later on, I'm going to use these use cases for the blog post. So I provide feature list as an input, and that's basically it. I give a little more instruction here. I tend to kind of, you know, want to keep it where it's just, okay, these are 10 use cases. I don't want it to repeat, here are the things or something along those lines. It does that. Now it sends that again to the Grok model or to the Grok provider where they have Llama 3 model hosted. And then that will give us the list of use cases. So in the interest of time, I think we're just 4 minutes before we end, so I'm just gonna keep it as is. I'll share these use cases and flows as well. And the last one, what it does is it takes that particular use case. Sorry, not that one. So it takes the use case and it generates the blog post. And in here, what I'm saying is I'm given, for example, I tried Brainy Docs or Langflow, any of the products, give the features that we extracted from the first one, they give the use cases that we got from the second flow, I'll give it to the prompt. And at the end, I'm just giving all 3 of those input, and then based on that, I'm asking to write an SEO optimized blog post, right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to give us a nice written article, taking all of that info from before and then running that. So now I said, okay, Brainy Docs, and then based on that, if I were to run it, then it's just going to give me that particular the information or blog post based on the inputs that we provided. So anyways, this, as you see, nothing custom here, just a few prompts, a few text blocks, and basically we have the flow together. Later on, I called it through N8N. It's another automation tool out there that's also open source. I just wanted to stitch everything together and save it to Google Sheets. That's the reason I used that. If not, you can use it, all of that within Langflow, and then yeah, that should basically run within the Langflow environment. So yeah, don't have much time. I think I'll just open it up to the Q&As. David, Gabriel, do you spot something that we did not answer? Feel free to take any of those questions.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should just take a look at the Q&A and go down. And
yeah.
I saw someone asking about Open Router. I've seen people asking about it in Discord. And from what I've seen, it's a OpenAI compatible API, right? So it's like interesting because probably it's just a matter of updating the base URL on the OpenAI component, and that really, for me, it's kind of weird, right? Using an OpenAI component to just run other models. So what we can do is create a new component. What I see is that the way, I think somewhere I saw that the way you should use it is with OpenAI. So just maybe we can create a new component, and Open Router, we want to support all the ways to use models, right? But as I said, right now you already can use it. I think that's the point I want to mention.
Okay, cool. And I see one here. This kind of goes back to a question that's for Tin. I'm curious if coders are using local models and not calls at GPT-4o or Claude Opus. Now, funny enough, we've been at a lot of conferences lately for our Python developers. We just had PyCon, right? And I had a ton of folks ask me about local models, right? And I know that there is support for Ollama and such. I haven't done it myself personally, but I'm curious on that, Gabriel. Have you seen any trends here? As far as whether or not folks are using local models compared to the publicly available ones?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like movement around light LLM and Ollama. Today I even updated, so Alpha 42 fixed something that one of our most valuable community members, that his name is Yaman BT. He's from South Korea, and he's creating a bunch of components. He's even built things that even I didn't know Langflow could do. So he's a very cool member of the community, and he created a component, a very complete Ollama component. And people were asking that. I've seen like movement around. People were asking why there's this bug and why it's not working, etc. So I do see a movement to local models, and especially Langflow as a team. my plan for us is to have a model that we all use, and we will just keep updating to the next better model or stuff like that. Just because I think that's where the path, like for the community, open source community as a whole, is to have access to models, right? And have, like, even Hugging Face is doing a very big step by providing GPUs for everyone for free. So I think we should use, and Olama especially is very easy to use, easy to set up. Just one command and you have a model. And even for these new Macs and now Windows laptops that are coming soon, you'll be able to run them on your machine, right? That's me coming from GPT-2, where I had to almost couldn't run my GPT-2 on my GPU a couple of years ago, and now being able to run it on my laptop, 10 times more powerful models. It's a blast, right? And I think that's where mostly that's where I think we're going, with some caveats like Grok, for example, that provide like a very distinct value, right? You know exactly why you're using Grok and not a Llama. You just want the speed, right? So, but I think for use cases like the hobbyists, are just your small company and stuff like that, I think having a local model that suffices, like creating content, is valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, there are a few additional questions. Maybe just before we end, we could probably take a few more. I would probably emphasize that if you have been to the repo, do please star. That's pretty much like liking the content. So give it a star on GitHub, and also be part of the community. We'll try to answer questions over there as well. If we were not able to answer your question in here, we'll try to probably bring that over, or if you want to just post that in Discord, we can do that. Yeah, other than that, this was really nice. I don't know, Gabriel, David, do you want to take one or two more pressing questions before we end, or should we just post answers in Discord? What would you guys suggest?
I'm looking for some juicy ones. Well, here's an easy one. I'll just throw a softball. Can we have access to this recording for after the session, and how?
Yeah, actually, so we'll post it, and also we'll provide a link to it in the community. We'll try to see if we can get it on YouTube or how we want to, but we want to do this on some sort of frequency. So we'll record all of these sessions and we'll make that publicly available, so you'll have access to it. And yeah, we'll also try to see if we can have questions available beforehand, so you can also ask questions before any of these sessions. And we do intend to have some basic use cases where you can follow along, build with us, and also some of the advanced ones. So it's going to be a variety of different things. Also, in case if you would like to showcase what you have built at your organization, or something cool that you've built as part of this community, let us know. I mean, we can also showcase that in one of these webinars. So that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So just one thing that I want to point out is about I saw someone asking about webhooks, but they said something about triggering separate flows in a single project, right? So to me, these are two different features, but we can think of them as one as well. So webhooks, we have a PR right now. We're just testing it out a bit more, getting documentation and stuff like that just to make it as sort of like putting it out, right? But it's possibly going to improve a lot in the coming weeks. It's a very simple one, but it's as soon as I got it working, I was very happy, right? And that was one of the key feature requests we got a lot. Even a friend of mine who started working on with Langflow, he's a Jira support engineer, right? So he wanted to have, a way to Jira call Langflow and just get the response. And that's Jira uses webhooks. So he just said, well, how do I do it? And then, so it's very close to done. The implementation itself is done, almost done, but the documentation requires some more steps. Now, in relation to triggering multiple or separate flows within a single project, we have an implementation of something called two components, right? Listen and notify. They are complex components and they are experimental components. But what they do is they change a state that is like underlying state. And whenever a state changes, if a component that is listening to that state will run. So a notify will notify that specific state. Let's call it run. Whenever the run state is notified, every component that is listening to it or flow that is listening to it will run, but only in the same canvas for now, right? Maybe later on we can just make it run everything, but for now it's just in the same flow. So that is a good solution, but it's still right in the middle of the path, right? We have to, as you said, since you are putting both of them in the same box, that's kind of where maybe we should, go to. So we need to analyze all the options, but we have sort of a starting point there for that kind of use case.
Awesome. I guess we might not be able to take other questions. They're really nice questions. We'll try to answer in the Discord chat. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
Let's give a link to the Discord.
Give a round of applause to the presenters here. Thanks, David and Gabriel, for joining. Yeah, we'll try to do it on certain frequency. We'll post it in Discord and also on the social channels. So yeah, please follow us on all of the social channels. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you in a little bit, hopefully in a week. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, all. See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.